All right, business. Good morning. We are starting a brand new chapter. This is going to be a beast. Marketing is interesting to some extent, and it's going to be very familiar to a lot of you. However, there's a lot of theory and a lot of content, and therefore, I'm going to be talking a whole lot over these slides. There's about 60 just for chapter one. So it's not difficult, but the volume is huge. So try and bear with me and just listen through to them because it is important to understand the overview before you start doing practice questions and stuff like that. Marketing is the backbone. It's essential for the success of any business. Without advertising, without having a good product, without setting the right prices, all of these important things, your customers aren't going to know that your product exists, and also, you're not going to know what the people's needs and wants are to create a good business plan. So, all of those aspects are critical for marketing. Here are a few beautiful quotes about the importance of marketing. I'll let you read those. You can, pause the screen and read those on your own time. I'll also upload these slides. So, let's just get through some misconceptions. When you think of marketing, this is the kind of stuff that usually pops in your head: selling, advertising, promotions, salespeople, cool media stuff, spending tons of money. So those are the kind of basic fundamental ideas that people think of with marketing. However, there's a lot more to it than that. What marketing actually is, which is why it's such an important job. It's a strategy or plan for a business. It focuses on the customer. So it's a total approach to running and building up your business. So it's not just advertising, but it's everything from the top to bottom. So it involves a combination of some simple and sometimes really complex decisions that then help your product become what it is. So a lot of times you look outside of the organization, it has to be dynamic. It's something, marketing is something that constantly changes and grows with your product. So the four main objectives of marketing, we call this the marketing mix. Ensure that the right products are being supplied that are fulfilling the customer's wants and needs. You got to set the right price that the customers can actually afford, so that they don't buy from a competitor. You have to then distribute the products to a place that's convenient to the customers. And we'll get into detail what this means later. And then finally, the one that most of you guys think of is you have to ensure that there's enough and effective promotion to convince them to buy from your business. So those are the four main objectives for marketing. So we call it the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. And all of those together will equal, when done correctly, a successful business. Now in HL, we actually talk about 7 P's of marketing. We add another 3: people, process, and physical evidence. And I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail here because this is actually brought up in a future chapter. So people is the sort of your labor staff, right? The effectiveness of the people, the stakeholders who are involved in helping the product become successful. Obviously, the more efficient, the better they look. The more skills they have, the more improved your sales will be. The processes themselves is sort of background services that support your business. So whether you have different payment methods, waiting time, ways of making things easier for your customers and improve the whole experience so that they then, once again, more likely to purchase your product and come back. Finally, physical evidence or the environment. These are tangible things, right? So this is going to be stuff like your actual equipment, machinery, the stores themselves. Once again, not spending a lot of time because later on there's a chapter on the extended marketing mix. Relationship marketing with other business functions. So how does marketing tie into everything? There's some courses that actually start with marketing and then go into all the other areas like HR, finance, operations, because marketing literally is the backbone of all business. Everything you do in marketing impacts other functional areas of business. So let's take a look at finance and marketing. Both departments have to work together to set a budget. Marketing department may want to spend more money on the budget because, let's say, for example, they want to launch a big ad campaign. So if they're not closely linked in with finance, where they can ensure that there's enough funding to do that, it can cause a major issue. So sometimes these departments conflict. The finance are trying to minimize spending. Marketing tend to be a center of expenditure. With HR, there's also quite a bit of overlap. Marketing information can actually let HR determine more workforce planning. So, depending on how many units we're expecting to sell, is it something we're selling all over the world where we need tons of workers? That kind of information can help your HR staff. Also, if it's really high quality technical products, you're going to need to recruit people with a lot more experience than if it's something very basic, simple, where you can just have assembly line stop people who pretty much can just read, write, and get on with things. So you can see how there's going to be an overlap with HR as well as marketing. On the operations side, once again, this is similar to what the example I just gave, but the type of product that is needed. So the market research can then inform the operations people how to prepare the products, what style, what specifications. So it links in a lot. The market research from marketing will then help the operations team come up with the best design that meets all the specifications. There is goods and services, and both need marketing. So remember, once again, goods are tangible. They're products. They're things that can be touched. If you don't like them, you can return them. They can be stored and then used up later on. There's an ownership of a product from goods. All right. So goods are a lot easier to compare because of the similar nature of a product. So you can compare one TV to another TV, for example. Services are intangible, so you can't touch a haircut, right? You can't touch sort of financial advising and pick it up and put it into a closet. It can't be stored and will need to be consumed immediately, right? So you have like the time for the hair, you immediately pay for a haircut or for a consultant's advice. You can't pay now and then sort of use the advice in the future. There's no ownership of the product when it's a service. There are more difficult ways to compare because sometimes the services aren't always exactly the same. So a hotel might treat a customer differently each time they visit. So even in the same hotel, that level of service may vary. So it's a little more tricky with services. Marketing has to consider characteristics between goods and services. So things like their tangibility, if you can separate them, heterogeneity, we're going to get into all this stuff, perishability, product strategy, price strategy, promotional strategy, place strategy. All these things get considered when looking at a difference between a good or a service. So a nice TOK question is it more difficult to market a good or a service? And you let me know which one's which. There's really no right or wrong answer, but so there are two distinct approaches that businesses can use to market their products. So you can either be product oriented or market oriented. So let's take a look at them. Product oriented, that's inward looking, we call it. So this is where you focus on selling a product that you make. All right, so you make the product first and then you try and convince everyone to buy it. So they supply products to try and tempt the customers. So a lot of the technology industry, stuff like that, people didn't come out and say, I want a smartphone. Apple released the first ever iPhone and then convinced us that this is something that we need and is very vital. And they did a pretty good job with that. So Microsoft, Ferrari, Apple, examples of product-oriented companies where they create a product, throw some money at it, convince us, and then we jump on the bandwagon. Market orientation is more outward looking. So these are companies that actually do some research, focus on making products that they know people already want. So they test the market, they ask the customers, what's something missing? What are you looking for? What do you need? And then they create that. They supply products that already meet the customer's needs and wants. All right. So there's a difference between being product and market oriented. So the advantages, they both have some advantages. So the quality can be assured because when you're product oriented, you're making stuff in a field that you already have a background in. Customers are willing to pay higher prices for product oriented companies because they're usually like brand new and exclusive. So you can charge a lot more. On the market oriented side, there's a lot more flexibility. You can respond quicker. So for example, if the market changes, you'll have all the data and information to update it. There's also less risk because you already know 100% that people want this versus product orientation where you're hoping that they buy into whatever you're selling. So the disadvantages are kind of the opposite of the advantages. So inward looking product orientation, So they assume what the consumers want. They don't know for sure. It is very risky. There can be a high failure rate, and for product orientation, you have to spend a lot of money on R&D, and you're not taking the customer into consideration. So that could be a waste. It could be fruitless. Market orientation, some of the negatives is that the market research beforehand can be very expensive. And then given the dynamic nature of the business environment, people change, their tastes change. There's a lot of uncertainty. So once again, there's also no guarantee that that approach will work. A new fad might come in and completely destroy everything else. So let's take a look at the different types of marketing strategies. So we've seen the two marketing approaches. We have commercial and social marketing strategies. Commercial marketing involves creating, developing, exchanging goods or services that customers need and want. So they carry out market research, establish what kind of demand there is, and then supply what's demanded. It's considered value free, and it doesn't really involve making moral judgments on the buying habits because you're using research. So you're not making any sort of assumption. You're just kind of fulfilling the existing needs that they have. Strategies might include traditional focus, like using billboards on television advertisements, local print media. You can do a lot of online marketing campaigns, mass media campaigns, things like that. So commercial marketing is more of the traditional marketing methods that you think of for promoting a product. Social marketing involves a different approach. It's where it tries to bring about changes in behavior that benefit society. So it ensures that businesses are kind of making good marketing decisions based on the wants and the firms, but also on society's long-term interest. So things like anti-smoking campaigns, public health things. So it's marketing things, clean products, healthy products instead of junk food, things like that. So it has two aims. It's still trying to sell a product to society, but the main goal is then to improve society on a whole. So the good thing about social marketing is it can give you a competitive advantage, separate you from some of your competitors, because people will buy from you if they think that you're more socially responsible. If your customers think you care about them, give a damn, they're more likely to buy from you. You can also charge more premium prices because when you're doing something good for society, people are willing to pay a little bit more. However, getting people to change their habits is really difficult. So there's a lot of background work. You have to set up groups and clubs, and it's like making a movement. So it is very challenging and difficult to create this culture with social marketing. So quick look at the differences. Commercial marketing is physical goods and intangible services, but selling for a profit. They exist to satisfy individual needs, wants, and then they reap profits for the business. And they use mainly in the private sector. Social marketing, the aim for social marketing is to influence or persuade social change or behavior and attitudes. When it's successful, it can satisfy needs and desires of the public. So it reaps benefits for the community. So instead of looking at the profit benefits, you're looking more at the benefit of the communities. So it's used a lot, mostly by government, non-government organizations, NGOs, things like that. All right, let's take a look at the market. So what is the market itself? Well, the market, just as a definition, is a place where customers and suppliers trade. Doesn't matter what they're trading, but it's any kind of place where an exchange of service or product is for some sort of compensation, usually money. It exists where there's demand for a particular product and where there's willingness from businesses to supply these products. So there needs to be both demand as well as a willingness to supply it. If that business doesn't make any money, an entrepreneur might not even start it, even if there's demand. Markets that cater for private individuals, i.e. the general public, are known as consumer markets. Markets that cater for organizations, which is businesses and government, are known as industrial or commercial markets. So if you're selling straight to the people, you're a consumer market. If you're selling to other businesses or the government, you're an industrial or commercial market. So when looking at competition, All right, and we're getting a little bit now into economics. There are several different market structures that show the range of really high competition versus almost no competition. So at the beginning, we got pure or perfect competition where there's a lot of very large firms. Each firm, so there's a large number of firms, not a few large ones. So because there's so many firms and they almost all have the same product, it's almost all identical. Anyone can start it up. Anyone can do it. The prices tend to be quite low because there's a lot of competition, and it's a free market. You can go anywhere because it's almost like getting the same product from anyone. There's really nothing differentiating it. Monopolistic competition is where there's still a large number of firms. They're slightly differentiated. So maybe they'll try and advertise or find a different way. They use branding. So it's not just like a box of crayons. They have Crayola crayons or Sabawi crayons, whatever it is, to try and make it seem different. But there's still no barriers to entry. Anyone can open up. It's not that difficult. So once again, prices tend to be lower because of the fact there are a lot of substitutes and a lot of competition. Oligopolies is where you have a few really large companies that dominate the industry. So they control the prices because there's less competition there. You have people, the largest firms, usually they're price makers, they call it, because whatever price they set is the price. Because if a small industry tries to come in and lower the price, well, that small industry is so tiny, they can't even supply enough product for the community. Therefore, they would just, people would have to go buy from the more expensive people anyway, because if you sold out all the time, because you're so small that you can't produce that quantity, you get in trouble. So the oligopolies, the big firms they're the price makers. Monopoly is where there's literally only one company, so there's no competition at all. So they can get profits fairly easily because there's literally nowhere else to go. So they produce as much as they can produce and they can kind of set their own price. They're the ultimate price maker. Let's take a look at different characteristics of a market. So we define what a market is. It's any place or process where there's an exchange of goods or services for money. So different characteristics could be the market size, customer base, barriers to entry, competition, geographic, demographic, market growth rate, and season and cyclical. So let's get into those in detail. Market size might differ, and there's different ways of measuring a market, right? You can look at it in terms of sales revenue. So if there's lots of sales or little sales, then it could be a larger or smaller market. International and globalization, it means that the size of a market is no longer confined just to like one area. Now the market could be the whole world. So in the old days, it might just be, your city or your town. Nowadays, it's a global market. Market size is how you measure the volume of a given market. So think of it in terms of like a pizza, right? The market size is the whole pizza, and then all the companies have different size slices. Whoever has the bigger slice controls the largest market share. Customer base. So an alternative way to measure the market size is by looking at the total number of potential customers. Multinational companies expanding all over the world are going to have a larger population to work with, so they're going to have a bigger customer base. The internet has made the market consumer base a lot bigger too, because now you can set an ad wherever you are in the world and anyone can pick it up on social media and through the internet. Barriers of entry are obstacles that limit the number of suppliers to enter into the market. So when you look at things like oil or manufacturing aircraft, the barriers are really high. Why? If I wanted to set up my own airplane company, it would take millions and millions of dollars for me to do so. Well, I'm a teacher, so you can guess that my salary probably wouldn't afford me to set up an airplane company. There's a lot of technical skills needed too. You would have to have enough sales to sustain that kind of market, and you'd have to have enough contacts and potential customers to keep you going. So there's huge barriers of entry versus setting up a lemonade stand where literally you need lemonades and some sugar and ice. I could do a lemonade stand in front of my yard if I wanted to. I could not set up an airplane company in front of my yard. So that's what a barrier to entry is. So some markets have very low barriers of entry, others have a very high barrier to entry. Competition is how much rivalry you have within the market. So soft drinks, for example, sports apparel, these kind of things have a small number of producers. Uh, think about it. You're usually buying Coke or Pepsi, all right? And most products other than that are owned by those two. So there's not a huge amount of rivalry. So depends on the industry, depends on the types of products. In some cases, there's a lot of competition. In others, there's very few. When you look at geographic aspects of the market, some markets focus on particular areas. Adidas, for example, they're the market leader in the supply for Taekwondo. Around 4/5 of the world's black belt holders live in Korea. So for them, that specific product that they're dealing with, their equipment for Taekwondo, Korea is going to be one of their main targets geographically. So there's 1 billion vegetarians who reside in India. So you might geographically, if you're a vegan health food company, that might be a really geographic type of market that could help you. So there's a lot of different types of ways you can separate geographically, depending on the type of customers and the cultures there and things like that. Demographics are social characteristics that you can divide your consumers into. So it's things like their gender, their age, ethnicity, religion. You can then target promotional strategies based on these demographics. So let's say, for example, you're in an area that's with a lot of females. So you might want to then alter your product where the sizes fit more with females, the color scheme attracts more females. It's more appropriate to females because there's a larger market there. So by separating demographics by age, gender, income, how wealthy people are, family sizes, whether or not they're big families, small families, are they retired, are the kids in uni, are they little babies, what type of jobs do they have, what social class they're in, all of these elements are then used to make up a better marketing campaign and target and be more efficient with sales. When we look at market growth rate, this refers to the increase in the size of the market a year. What's over a period of time, usually per year. So remember the pizza? We said that it's a certain size and then every company has a slice. Well, as the population increases, as more people start being able to afford certain things, that pizza can grow and get bigger and bigger. So normally you represent that growth in terms of a percentage. So if it rises from $100 to 110, the growth would be 10% because it's 10 divided by 100 times 100 to make it a percentage. So 10% growth. So you would look at the growth in the market, and that once again can happen as a result of anything from population increases to changes in tastes, things like that. Seasonal and cyclical. All right, seasonal is any kind of change or pattern that occurs or repeats over 1 year period. So it could be, for example, every summer, it could be by the weather, summer, winter, spring. You might have the cyclical is very similar, but it's usually over a shorter span. So once again, some things come in cycles, so every 4 years maybe something gets popular, like the World Cup comes every 4 years, the Olympics. So a lot of gear or merchandise related to that stuff is going to be very cyclical. While bathing suits is going to be very seasonal because you're going to probably buy them closer towards the summer, while winter coats also seasonal because you buy those in the winter. Can you see the difference? So it's just other ways of splitting up your market. So now let's talk about market share. I alluded to this earlier. So the size of the market was that pizza. The market share is the percentage of that pizza a certain organization controls. So if you're selling sodas, right? You calculate the total market share by looking at the sales revenue from your firm, your soda company, if you're Pepsi, let's say, and divide it by the entire industry, everyone who sells sodas, how much revenue comes in. You times it by 100 to turn it into a percentage. So that's how you calculate market share. So if, let's say, all the sales for all sodas was 1 million dirhams, right? And you sold 100,000 dirhams this year. You would take 100,000 divided by 1 million times it by 100, and that means 10%. You control 10% of the soda industry market share. Really easy number. An increased market share shows that you're doing a really good job against your competitors. You're eating up more of that. Your slice of pizza is bigger than everyone else's. So the goal really, the person who has the highest market share is called a brand leader. And that's what you want to become. You want to be like the Apple of the mobile phone industries. You want to become a brand leader because you can then set the prices, set the tone, get more sales, because people like to back the winner. So there's a lot of different ways you can increase that piece of the pizza. The market share can grow from promotion. So if you put a lot of ads and promotional activities, if you develop new products or improve your products, people will start buying up more and you increase your market share. If you get your staff to be more motivated, better customer service, your sales will increase, right? You'll have an edge over your competitors. If you get rights through the use of things like copyrights and patents, because what that does is it stops other people from using your product. So you're the only one who can sell for a certain period of time, therefore your market share would increase. And then finally, just have more efficient channels of distribution. So if you have a store plus an online e-commerce plus delivery and this and that, you can increase your sales versus someone who only has a kiosk in one area. So distribution channels is another way of growing market share. All right, let's talk about market concentration and concentration ratio. God, this is so long, right? We still got a long way to go to, but that's okay, because we're soldiers. Market concentration measures the degree of competition within a market by calculating how much market share the largest firms in the industry have. The sum of these market shares is also known as the market concentration ratio. So, let's put it into context. For example, if there's an industry that has 3 firms with a concentration ratio of 98%, what that means is that 98% of that pizza is taken by 3 huge slices, 3 big firms. So this would not be a very competitive industry at all, because then 2% of sales only come from all the other firms in the world. So it helps you see really like whether they're an oligopoly, a monopoly, or if it's perfect competition. It helps you measure what the competition landscape is. Marketing objectives. All right, these are also quite important. So we talked a little bit about it, but there are specific goals of an organization. One of the main, when you're a profit company, marketing objectives is to increase sales or sales revenue. So you increase the customer base and or persuade existing customers to buy more. That way you can generate higher sales. So you find a new customer outside, or you convince more internal customers who are buying from competitors. Higher market share is another objective. So objective number 1 is increased sales revenue. Objective number 2, higher market share, because that means that you're doing much better against your competitors and you're growing faster. Increased market leadership. So once again, by having the largest market share and being a market leader, you can get a lot of benefits. More customers are going to be more likely to buy from you. More suppliers are going to want to give you discounts. There's things called economies of scale, which we'll get into in finance. So there's a lot of advantages for having increased leadership. Improved product and brand awareness. So once again, you want people to know your product name. You want them to have that awareness and have loyalty. So they're not just shopping from you once, they're coming back and back and back. Another big objective is to develop new products. Once again, you're always looking to grow. You can link this into Ansoff's matrix, right? Back in Unit 1. A growth strategy. By developing new products, you can extend sales for your company, improve your growth. So you always need to innovate, come up with new products so that you can have the edge over your rivals. Brand perception or product positioning, really important too. You want the opinion and judgment of your customers to be very high of your business, because it once again helps you overall and helps you sustain, especially when competition increases or the economy tanks out. There's also social objectives of marketing. So those are like the more formal objectives, increasing sales and having more market share and brand image and things like that. But there are some social marketing objectives. You want to build support and connect with new donors. So if you want a lot of support, you may want to generate awareness of the NPO's calls. So if you're a nonprofit organization, you're going to have social marketing objectives instead of traditional marketing objectives. You're going to want to improve brand recognition of your NPO because once again, you're trying to get awareness out about whatever social cause you're looking to promote. You want to create positive attention towards your nonprofit organization's operations. You're going to want to demonstrate the value of the NPO to the local community. How is it going to help society? So let's talk now about marketing strategies and the changes in customer preferences. So how do the changes in customer preferences impact the strategies that we've already talked about? So first, let's talk about why marketing strategies evolve. So there's several reasons why you might have to change your marketing strategies. Number one, customers change their minds. The tastes. So they're constantly subject to change. So for example, different flavors like health food might start kicking in. Spicy food might become more of a thing, a fad. So now you're gonna have to add a spicy version of a sandwich you had. You can see an example here about Bollywood movies. So there are certain things that initially were components of Bollywood, and then they had to adapt it as more and more people around the world like Bollywood. So they'd have to shorten the movies a bit, less songs and dancing, things like that. So there could be changes in your customer's perspective. Reasons why it might evolve also might be a shorter product life cycle. Look, you use different strategies at every stage of the product life cycle. If sales are going really well and strong, you're going to be doing a lot less overt promotion than when things are on a decline. So depending on how much competition you have, if this cycle over here shortens a lot over time, then you are going to have to enact more promotional activities a lot sooner so that you can delay this decline. So the length of the product life cycle can also be a reason why you have to change your strategies and maybe invest more sooner than you thought. Technology, all right? Internet, mobile technologies have changed everything. So now it's making things push more towards e-commerce. Businesses have to have an online presence. The ones that do a better job. So any changes in technology can also impact your marketing strategies. The competition. How much competition could change the way you market too? So if initially you were the only shop in the town, and then all of a sudden 3 or 4 people opened up, maybe before you just use word of mouth marketing. Now you're having to do a lot more overt marketing, billboards and social media campaigns and things like that. So the evolving marketing strategies can be seen as a defensive strategy to help hold you off against your competition who are threatening your market share. Remember, you want a bigger slice of pizza. Why? Because pizza's delicious. Globalization is another reason that you might have to change or evolve marketing strategy. Because now we're relying on other countries, whether customers coming from all over the world or our labor staff coming from all over the world, it's forcing us to have to change. So even maybe translating our websites, coming up with different flavors, because once again, we're no longer just addressing the local markets because of globalization. So our marketing strategy had to evolve as a result. So I hope that was helpful. That was a beast. It's a 33-minute presentation. There are some review slides here for you at the end. Please go through those. I'm gonna set you some mini tasks and assignments too over the week. Listen to this a couple of times. Once again, it's very, very simple and straightforward. It's just a lot of words and a lot of theory. And unfortunately, quite a few chapters are similar to this in marketing. So brace yourselves for a lot of yapping away by Mr. Sabs. All right, peoples, Sabs out.